That we're joined by Jason Brodsky. He's Policy Director at United Against a Nuclear Iran. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. So first up then, bearing in mind that Saudi Arabia and Israel don't have diplomatic ties, can we imagine their respective defence ministers crossed paths, at least, in Washington?
Good afternoon. It's great to be with you. I think that there is a distinct possibility that their paths crossed, or at least messages have been exchanged through the Americans. Let's remember that then Prime Minister Netanyahu actually visited the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince back in 2020. So I don't think that this an exchange of messages or even their paths crossing is beyond the realm of possibility.
No photographs at the moment, though. We won't be seeing them for now. Are we likely to see then more US-led defence projects in the region, do you think, to try and counter aggression from Iran? We have seen some already, of course. Are we going to see more of the same?
Yes, I do believe that's the case. I think it was very telling in Defense Minister Gantz's readout from his meeting with the Secretary of Defense. He emphasized the need for the U.S. to lead on establishing a regional coalition to counter the Iranian regime. And I think that the U.S. is also in a period now where it's attempting to shore up its relationships with its traditional allies and partners in the Middle East, particularly the dispatching of a very senior level delegation to the United Arab Emirates to pass condolences to the UAE's new president, and as well as the reports that President Biden himself may be meeting with MBS next month.
Now let's talk about the nuclear deal, the JCPOA. The Europeans have been trying to kind of boost efforts to revive it. Of course, the talks have been stalled for many months now. Do you think the Biden administration is waiting for perhaps a less sensitive political time to get back into it?
I don't think that there will be a less politically sensitive time to get back into this deal. I think it was a very important moment a few weeks ago when a bipartisan majority of senators voted twice with a message to the Biden administration. They were non-binding votes, but they were definitely telegraphing to the White House that they want to see an Iran policy that moves beyond the JCPOA. They're not interested in testing the proposition of mutual compliance with a shorter and weaker deal. They're interested in coming up with something that can survive past one presidency and will put the United States on a more firmer footing in countering Iranian aggression.
Well, meanwhile, we are continuing to get these very alarming reports about just how advanced Iran's nuclear program is. Should we be concerned about that? There is right now, of course, no monitoring in effect.
Well, I think we should be concerned about the advances that Iran is making in its nuclear program. Many of these are irreversible in terms of the knowledge that it's been acquiring. But at the same time, I think it's important that to note for your viewers that Iran has been undertaking these advances in its nuclear program without any costs from the international community. And that has emboldened it to continue to test international red lines. And so I think one positive development has been the U.S. announcement, has been Israel's announcement that the U.S. is going to be participating in the Chariots of Fire exercise, simulating a strike on Iran. And that will send a very important message to the Iranian leadership. And at the same time, I think it will be important for the U.S. to crack down on sanctions enforcement, particularly on Iran's exports to China of oil, because that has kept the regime afloat after all of these months.
Well, quite. I mean, do the Iranians even care whether or not the deal is signed? You had President Raisi recently boasting that Iran was right now selling more oil than ever, lots of it going to China. Do they even need the sanctions relief at this stage?
Well, I think that in the long run, they do. They do need sanctions relief. But right now, the Iranian leadership is advancing its nuclear program without cost, taking advantage of high oil prices and the export of its energy to China, and at the same time promoting the concept of a resistance economy. But I do think Iran, in the long run, is interested in a deal. Right now, though, it's only interested in a deal on its own maximalist terms. But it's going to be up to the U.S. and the Europeans to change that calculus. And to date, they have not done so.
And of course, we have anti-regime protests going on in towns and cities across Iran right now. There is, as far as we can tell, been a brutal response by the security forces, at least 6 people killed already. Do you think these protests will go anywhere? The Israeli Defense Minister, Benny Gantz, calling them Iran's weak underbelly, or do you think that they will end up being brutally repressed, just as we saw back in 2019?
Iran is a protest-rich country. Protests happen regularly throughout the Islamic Republic, but these are significant in the sense that we see economic complaints turning into calls for the regime to collapse and for a new form of government to come about with chants and the crowds of death to the dictator. So, but I don't, it's important not to underestimate the ability of the regime to counter and suppress these protests. They are very practiced at it. They shut down the internet early and often to prevent protests from spreading and to prevent the West from understanding what's going on inside the Islamic Republic. And so we should not discount that fact, but there is a growing disillusionment between Iranians and this regime, and they are coming to the realization that this regime cannot be reformed and that its leadership is the fundamental problem at the end of the day.
Jason Brodsky, thank you very much.
Thank you.